Hey guys, Thomas the Silly Genie here, aka Mustached Tom, and welcome to my review of Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. Now, you could probably tell I'm a little late on this one. I've pushed it off on purpose as I was focusing on the horror genre for October. But that has passed now, so I feel now is a good time to sort of dive back into Maleficent. Thinking back on it, on Maleficent, the first one, people, complained, I think, mostly about Angelina Jolie's performance on Maleficent and said, oh, this story it created a whole new version of Maleficent that was much more compassionate and it sort of ruined her character, but honestly, after the Disney reboots that have been coming out, I think, at least for me, I will say, that I do have a deeper appreciation for the first Maleficent movie, to be honest. You can still call the performance a little bit wonky or whatever, but the very minimum is that at least they tried to do something different with the character. What a lot of people have been complaining about whenever they talk about the reboot of, like, The Lion King or Aladdin or any of these other current Disney reboots is that they're too one-to-one to the original. So, again, I do give a little bit more respect to Maleficent now than I used to. So, coming into Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, I went in knowing that it would sort of continue to follow this version of Maleficent, this newer version, that again, we see this movie begin with we're in like the forest area, and we see that these people, the humans, are hunting for the Fae, the little creatures that live in the forest. Some of them are captured, at least two of them are, or one of them is, and then the humans get attacked. And we cut to some narration talking about how the story came to be, how the story of Maleficent became a story of one of she is the evil character. And I guess early spoiler alerts, even though this movie's been out for a bit now, but it turns out that Maleficent was being framed for all of this evil, but nonetheless, so anyways, we see the three fairies, whatever their names are, I honestly forget what they are, sort of fly around, and they're sort of messing around with Queen Aurora. Yes, she's a queen, she's not a princess, she's a queen in this, which is, a pretty interesting shift, but for Disney, because in the past, the Queen, more oftentimes than not, was associated with an evil character. Ironically enough, or maybe not ironically enough, that the actual evil character in this movie is also a queen. So she's talking to her subjects, which are the Fae, the creatures that live in the forest. And one of the creatures, I believe its name is Pinto, is like messing around with her crown, making her move about, sort of moving her over to her meetup with Philip. And thus he proposes to her, and they do the whole kiss. And the crow that used to work for Maleficent is sort of keeping an eye out, leaves off to find Maleficent, who's like on some edge looking out on the precipice of whatever. So he tells her the news, the update, and she flies off to deal with that. So we then meet the king and Ingrid, the queen. Queen Ingrid, our obvious villain, is prepping up some weapons to take out these Fae creatures. And Philip comes in, telling his parents that he is engaged now. And Ingrid, the queen, insists that They bring over Maleficent over, which is an obvious ploy to trap her there. So Aurora, sorry, I have a little trouble saying that name, tells Maleficent, and at first she initially refuses. So Aurora keeps like pleading and eventually gets her to go. Anyways, we cut to Ingrid listening in on what Philip and his dad are talking about. So she's in the background, sneaking in, listening in, getting some info. She goes to one of her welders, this like announcer lady, who like fires things eventually. And then she goes down to the secret passage to talk to one of her monster minions, this fey creature that now works for her. And we can see hidden within this little hidden area is the spindle that caused, well, the first movie to essentially happen. Meanwhile, we got back to Maleficent, who is practicing her greetings, trying to be all pleasant-like, and it kind of looking awkward, obviously. So Aurora comes out and gives her a gift, and as they move on in to this town, the people are freaking out, obviously, seeing Maleficent with the stories that they have been told. They head in, and dinner is served, and Ingrid begins to mention the story that she has been passing around, and she's telling it as if this story is not of her creation, that it just came out of the ether or it came from somewhere else. And Maleficent immediately brings up the missing creatures, so you could tell that there is a bit of tension between this little scene, even though it is very much just a dinner. It's a dinner with a lot of like back and forth. So, in response to that, Ingrid mentions the humans that died for her, and Maleficent freezes this cat that is like charging through the table. So Ingrid sees this and it's sort of like, oh, I don't know, we should probably do something. Get the guards ready, and in that process, Maleficent attacks. When she does, we see Queen Ingrid get suspiciously close to the king. It's pretty obvious to the audience, at least to the older audience, what she does, but for the sake of it, I'll just say it's just obvious for now. Anywho, we see that Aurora leaves to get to the king's side as he like passes out, and Maleficent leaves. She wants nothing more to do with this situation. And the weaponsmith that I mentioned earlier makes her way up to attack and hits Maleficent into the water. So she's knocked out in the water. So as we cut back to the castle, we see Philip try to see if true love's kiss will be the cure, as it was in the previous movie. And we see Ingrid very obviously whisper her goodbyes to the king. So that's the more obvious hint if the first one wasn't enough. Anyway, we see this other creature that looks very much like Maleficent sort of just come out of nowhere and pick her up. A little bit of a creature coming out of nowhere context. And no, I'm not going to say that's a deus ex machina. That's the wrong terminology. This creature is not a machine. For those who wrongly use the phrase deus ex machina, I just wanted to throw some shade and say that this isn't a deus ex machina. It's just a creature coming out of nowhere. Very different things happening here. Anyway, so Aurora goes back to the forest, and the crow returns to, I believe, her at that point. And Ingrid asks the weaponsmith lady what happened. And she, from that, gears up for war. She thinks that Maleficent is still alive, which she is, And thus we cut back to Maleficent, who wakes up in this unknown location with the winged creature that saved her. And she comes across all these other fellow creatures that look like her, and we learn that they are called the Dark Fae. And from here, Maleficent kind of takes some time and sees the situation as one of the Dark Fae suggests that the way to move through this time and get through this situation that they're finding themselves in is to find a way of peace, while the one of the other Dark Fae suggest going to war. And Maleficent is in the grounds of peace will never happen, because she's been jaded by love before. So that is her scenario. We see this small creature sort of bumbling around, sneaking into the king's room. We get a little bit of a distraction with this creature. I think this is the Pinto creature I mentioned earlier. Like, it found its way here. I forget how it found its way here, but it found its way here. Anyways, it gets chased. It's a little bit of a time waster for kids, or for like the really young audience that just want to see a little bit of distraction. It doesn't necessarily do anything for the plot. So yeah, it's a little bit of a time waster. But anyway, we get back to Ingrid capturing this creature, her guards capturing the creature, and she starts to wait for Aurora to like make up her mind or like talk to her or something. Meanwhile, the weaponsmith makes this warning to like the forest. Meanwhile, Aurora is like still in the castle at this point, in some other location, talking with Philip. Is thinking about what she can do for this kingdom that she's about to be a part of now, and opposed to that, Philip is wondering about Maleficent. Bit of a role reversal there, but okay. So, the Dark Fae, the one that wants peace, is still trying to convince Maleficent that that is their path forward. And Maleficent sort of bats off the idea that Aurora is her daughter, even though I think she's just saying that because she doesn't necessarily even know these creatures all too well. And she's trying to gauge the situation for what it is. So we cut back to Ingrid, who comforts Aurora because she still doesn't know what's going on, and gives her this new dress that she can wear for the wedding, because that is what Ingrid suggests that will bring peace between them, is Philip marrying Aurora, meaning the queen of the forest will marry into the castle of the humans, and that will create peace. So she heads out and gets a little bit of a flashback. I just wrote that it was a flashback. I actually forgot to write in my notes what the flashback was for. Whoops. Anyways, Philip checks in on Ingrid, on Aurora, while Ingrid checks in on her little minion, who is creating this sort of weapon to take out the other Fae. And we see them use it, and it is able to make the creature burst into dust. So she's very pleased with this update. Meanwhile, Maleficent is sort of just perusing about while the Dark Fae are having some sort of party for some reason. Meanwhile, the guards head out to start to try to find the Dark Fae. And as they're making their way through the forest and killing it, Maleficent feels this and heads out. Um, and one of the Dark Fae goes to like protect her by her side. And she's able to turn the tides as the humans are sort of initially winning, and then she changes that all up. These bells ring as the rest of the Fae, the normal Fae, start to head out because they've been told about the wedding or whatever at this point, I believe. And from there, we see that the Raven, who got stuck as a human at this point, gets placed among the humans because, obviously. I said Ocean mention at some point, I don't think I wrote it in my notes, but Maleficent is told about her heritage of where she comes from, about this dark phoenix-like thing that she came from, essentially. So anyways, Philip checks in with Aurora, giving her some flowers, trying to get all up on that. So she starts to sneak around on her own time. I forget what gave her a suspicion. No, the flower actually, that the gift that she was given, the flower itself, gave her some sort of suspicion. So she starts to sneak around, and she finds the hidden workshop, and yeah. Meanwhile, the Dark Fae want to bury one of the other Dark Fae that got injured in the fight. Meanwhile, we see the Raven start to climb up and make his way up to like the castle area. Meanwhile, the Fae are being tricked into the wedding area, so they're all in one area now. And Aurora sees the spindle and starts to get all... And as she almost touches it, this causes her to see the truth of what Ingrid was up to, only to see Ingrid come down and reveal herself anyway, so a little bit of an unnecessary thing, I feel. I feel like Aurora just being down there and Ingrid just coming down would have caused that to happen anyway, so an unnecessary flashback. So anyways, Ingrid talks about her wanting the peace for her people and how she wishes to obtain that peace through making sure that all of these creatures are dead. And the guards lock up Aurora. Meanwhile, the Dark Fae are preparing for war because of the injured Dark Fae died at that point, and so they're charging in now. And Ingrid makes several weapons from the normal Fae that can insta-kill the Dark Fae. So the wedding music begins, and the doors are locked for the normal Fae that are all trapped in that room. Meanwhile, the Raven tries to make his way up there. Excuse me. So Aurora makes some noise as she's in this locked room. She ties a bunch of bed ropes together to like try to work her way down. The people come in and they see this, and she actually hides behind the door and then runs her way out. And makes her way down anyways. She eventually crashes in as the Dark Fae are moving in to Philip's room, and they sort of are she's trying to convince him of the truth of the situation. So the humans start firing upon the Dark Fae, which are making their way upon this castle. They're being taken out very quickly, obviously. And as I mentioned, Aurora explains what happened to the father, what really happened. And the Dark Fae are trying to swing around to the other side, only to get attacked from that side as well. Raven tries to help Aurora as she gets closer to the door that holds the normal Fae in the captivity. Meanwhile, the Dark Fae are getting closer to the Queen, but they can't quite reach her because they're still being heavily fired upon. Meanwhile, Philip is able to get to her and confront her and try to convince her not to do this anymore. Um, and he sort of skydives off of the castle as she preps the guards to take him away. So, one of the fairies that are in the room, one of the fae, the blue one, risks her life, quote unquote, to stop this assault of this trap room that has all this red dust that's able to kill them. And she plugs herself into the thing that is able to attack them and is able to save the rest. And the raven is tackled down as well, but in this rage, he's able to turn into a bear with Maleficent's help. And she finally arrives, entering the fray. And the other fairies sort of start to attack the woman weapon smith. So the fae are let go with the help of the raven, and they are able to get out. And the guards are going to start attacking the Dark Fae in a more direct approach, more up close and personal. Meanwhile, Philip manages to stop two of them from fighting. While that's going on, Maleficent is moving on, trying to get to Ingrid as fast as possible. She gets attacked by the Queen and fades into dust. This is like the time where you think Maleficent is dead, but the pre-established new lore of her being this Dark Phoenix obviously means that this will not be the end. And obviously Aurora sees this and she's upset. She actually rages out and tries to attack herself. But Maleficent is able to return as a dragon. I forgot if she did this in the first movie, turning into the dragon, but she does here. And the Queen tries to drop Aurora to make her escape. She tries to flee away. The more Dark Fae are trying to move in on Ingrid, while Aurora is caught by Maleficent and they both manage to get up. She has her newly formed staff and is able to break the curse as well, and magics up the kingdom, and all that to happen, and then the king is able to wake up. Ingrid is turned into a goat. So Aurora is all happy now, asking Maleficent to join her in the wedding prep, and the wedding goes down. Two of the three fairies argue over what color her dress will be. She's like moving in to get married. They kiss, and Maleficent starts to return to where the Dark Fae reside. And that was Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. I thought it was a pretty decent movie. Again, considering that they're trying this new sort of story structure for Maleficent. Again, I do have a deeper appreciation for it now. Again, just with all the Disney reboots that are just one for one. And I feel like they did a little bit more here in terms of like, okay, they're giving her lore, they're giving her this whole Dark Fae thing, and she now has like all these other creatures she can sort of go back to, check in on Aurora, all this stuff. There were a few moments of either a little bit of time wasting and a little bit of like that just happened to move things along. So there are a little bit of gaps here and there, but overall I would say still pretty good. I would give it a 6 out of 10. Pretty enjoyable, and that's my review of Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. If you enjoyed it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One would head you over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated, and until next time everyone, bye bye.